Hello, and welcome to the Cancer Journey podcast. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Sherry Ann.
So, we're going to start with our PESH check in to get grounded. So, I'll start.
Okay.
Um, Physically, I am a 3.5. Emotionally, I am a 4. Spiritually, a 3.8. And hope is a 4.4. And my word is disconnected.
Okay, my turn. Physically, I am 2.75. Emotionally, 3.3. Spirit, 3.6. Hope, 4.3. And my word is all the things. All
And
the things.
right. And I do just want to mention for people out there who aren't as familiar with using PESH that no matter where our numbers are, high, low, there is no judgment. We are just where we are. You're just like you are where you are in any given moment. So it's never a judgment. We do it, for the individual, for ourselves, not to give to someone to do with, but for us to have our own check-in. So we get to just exist where we are and be real with it. So just wanted to note that for those who aren't familiar with PESH.
Exactly. And it also gets us grounded in this moment because the numbers are just for where we are in this moment. And part of the reason why I know if you close your eyes, I do too, is that we're connecting with all those different parts, the physical, the emotional, the spirit, and the hope. So
Yeah. Yeah, I need to close my eyes to really internalize what's going on because otherwise I'll be distracted by all the other things I can see and then it becomes external, whereas I want my internal numbers. So that's also why I closed my eyes. Okay, so let's get into it. Today is part 2 of our emotional intelligence series. So today we're talking about emotional agility, whereas last episode we talked about emotional literacy.
yes. Agility. There's so much to say about that. And so, what do we mean by emotional agility? We're talking about the ability to be agile with emotions in general. And we use emotions and feelings interchangeably in this conversation and context, where I may now know the words, the literacy, it's like the language, but can I feel it? Because emotions are here. They're body sense. They're the language of our body to inform us of information. Something just happened. So whether we're in the expansive emotion and where the emotion I'm feeling is like joy or well-being, I could feel that. It feels expansive. I can breathe. I like them. They're what people classify as good or positive emotions. And the reason why we like them is because they are expansive. I can breathe. There's space. Um, and at the same time, at the lower level of our emotions map of emotions is the constricting ones. And I was just reading something the other day about like jealousy and how it's like, oh, we classify that as bad, and it's kind of got this boo, let's not just be jealous or let's not envy other people.
Mm-hmm.
Because and then so when we do that, look at my shoulders, look at my my neck, it's like it's all tight because I'm not with me. I'm over there. There's a light side and a dark side to every emotion. And just when I was talking about jealousy, it's like, well, that's one perspective to be in this boo place. And it may be constricting because I'm over there looking at something else and wanting that and not here with me. But
Mm-hmm.
I can change the perspective of, and it is growth. It is the aspiration And
Mhm.
so when I change that perspective, all of a sudden I'm already lifted.
Right. So what you're more so talking about is the like that agility is the feeling of it, and you're speaking to, we may recognize when it's here and we may not recognize when it's here. And based on our own map of emotions, what the vibration is when something is expansive and filling versus when, it's lower on the map and constricting and it doesn't feel good, and the assumptions that come with it. So
Hmm.
I do want to get there. I do want to come back to what is agility. Because yes, it is the visceral feeling, and those are many, many, many of the ways that we can feel when we're in an emotion. I know we kept wanting to go agility when we were talking about literacy, so I just kind of want to talk about the difference between them a little bit. Whereas like literacy is kind of it's very heady. It's knowing what words you have, what language you have, how we define what each of those things are. Um, and it can have judgment. I actually feel like judgment's this like umbrella that has nothing to do with the individual actual stages, but just like this perspective we can have of emotions. Personally, it's like how I see it. So literacy is, a lot for people who are all up here. They need to feel like calculated to understand before they can go to their heart, which is definitely a pathway that a lot of people take when they are becoming more emotionally intelligent. Like they need to know first, or they need to witness, or they need to, you know, have some sort of palette to begin with to really start to understand what emotional intelligence is. And so that kind of goes back to those basics. Whereas agility is allowing yourself internally, and this is a lot more personal work, I like to think of feeling and understanding what that looks and feels like to you, viscerally, with a trigger or with a stimuli to make that happen, or without one. Sometimes seeing the word alone, like literacy, can just trigger it in you. And again, I'm not using trigger as a bad word because it doesn't have to be. It spurs something in you though. Like something happens, you see an interaction, you see a word, you read a book, you watch a movie, and what that triggers for you is an emotion. And that agility to be able to know what you're feeling and where it's landing your body and how you're reacting internally, like what that message is the agility.
And that is equally as important as literacy. I mean, they're all important. It's not like, oh, well, that's just literacy and those are the words. No, if you don't know the words, you can't really get into the feeling of it. And I know the last time we wanted so much to just talk about the feeling and really embrace that part of it, because that's the part we tend to shy away from. We talked about that kind of last podcast, where when we're in the, again, constricting, or even the transitional. So the in transitional are not neutral, but they'll feel more constricting if it's kind of you're heading down the map of emotions, or they're feeling more expansive, or feel like lighter if you're going up. So their vibration is really based on what the situation is. And so you were talking about movies, which I love, because in movies we get to emote. It initiates, it sparks um, emotions. That's kind of its job, and I like that. It takes me on this journey of a story, but I also get to experience that journey with the feeling, and
Mhm.
that's the same in real life. We're on our journey, and we feel things.
Mhm.
And so we're not always in control because the movie is preset, right? So you're just kind of being taken on the pathway. With the real life, you're actively on it. So you're taking the steps, and things are happening, and circumstances show up, and situations show up, and you're ignited
Mhm.
by those things.
Right.
And it's worth a pause.
Mhm. I Yes, absolutely. And um Yeah, as you're saying, exactly what you're saying with the movies, that came to mind too, because with a movie, it's predetermined what you're gonna feel, which is really great when, you want to tap into an emotion that maybe is hard for you to get there on your own. And because it's so predictable in a movie, it is we can be a lot more structured. There's a lot more choice in terms of the reactions there. And I mean, the movies were created to make you feel a specific way and tell you how to feel in a specific way and give your body a certain message. So those ones they're really easy to tap into and use with your agility. Whereas, like you said, when you're living your life and everyday things come up, it's not predetermined. Everything is completely spontaneous and like in a movie, if there's a big audience watching a movie, we're all feeling that together. When something happens in real life, even if the exact same stimulus happens to you or me or someone else, we can all have a different emotional reaction, based on the context or how we're like affected in it. So it really, movies are a tool for sure, but I think that like with agility on its own, it's really knowing how we personally react, right? Like for example, like if someone makes a joke that's a little bit more like at your expense, some people love that. Some people think it's so funny and they can play along. They're like, okay, well, let me rip into you then. Whereas, I mean, me personally, I don't like it. And so I'm going to react differently than the person who's just going to go along with it and create this kind of like back and forth banter about it. And I personally will be like, okay, and kind of shut it down because it doesn't make me feel good. I couldn't tell you exactly when emotion comes up, but it doesn't make me feel good. So the agility is knowing that at any time some sort of stimulus can happen and there's a message that's coming from me that tells me more about myself and more about what matters to me. I wanted to bring this to our coach training because very early on in our coach training, as we talk about emotional intelligence and being with emotions, because that's like, if not the biggest part, one of our biggest parts, like, of our training is being with emotions. And we did talk about that a little bit more in literacy, but we go through all the emotions in our map of emotions that we have in our model to make sure that our coaches are able to tap into them or they're aware of them, and we really slow it down, right? So it creates both literacy and also agility, because not only are they seeing the word and have like putting that word in their pocket of their vocabulary, but they're putting it into the vocabulary of their being, right? Like if you say joy, what we're asking them to do is really like tap into joy, tap into a moment that joy occurred for you. It doesn't matter what caused it, but what are you feeling? And like, where does it reside in your body? What color is it? Like, take it apart and make it special for you so that way it's accessible for you. Because the more we're able to access, I mean, joy can be a lot more easily accessed than, say, like, rage or pessimism. But we still ask our coaches to go there because um, well, I even do like frustration. To me, frustration is an easy one, right? Because like, who doesn't see red when they're frustrated and feel like those frustration tears start to like perk up, right? Like viscerally, I think that's a really easy one for us all to tap into. Um, and it's important to know what comes up there and how we begin to react so we can make the choice that allows us to stay with it, especially when someone else is getting frustrated, and how to hold that space for them. And for me personally, as a coach, that's where the agility becomes really important. But I could also see how outside of coaching, it's also a really important skill, instead of trying to like suppress that in someone else, suppress that in you, because we know with frustration that suppression doesn't work very well.
Right. And the more that we are in tune with our emotions, the easier life actually is. It's like it's more of a flow because you're not pushing things down. You're not, it's like not stop motion, like, uh-oh, I just felt anger come in. Uh-oh, what do I do with that? And now you're maneuvering around the emotions instead of being with it.
Hmm.
It could be truly anger is just somebody stepping over a boundary.
Hmm.
And it could be a personal space boundary. Let's just make it very simple. You're not really aware okay, what is my space for personal space? But all of a sudden it's got crossed and you just feel something. When we know that that is there, and I'm just using personal space as an example, could be any other kind of boundary, but we can step back, create more space, or do whatever we need to not feel that impingement.
Mhm.
But the anger, that trigger is like, up, something just happened that's not agreeable for you. What do how do you maneuver around this instead of like, "Oh, I'm just mad," and now you're pushing against it. That's
Mhm.
extra energy. That's not the goal of all of the emotions. I mean, like fear, there's, we're animals, truly. So we have that whole fight or flight kind of radar going on. But something like anger, it's like, oh, okay. I
Mhm.
can either be angry and now I'm on a totally different journey and trajectory and letting it take me over versus feeling it in me going, oh, I I just got a whiff of anger. Okay, what do I want to do with that? And move with it, not be consumed by it.
Mhm. Right, right. And the more agile we can be with, because really for me, agility is the ability to be with any one of your emotions and just simply be, not not thinking about the reaction or what we want or any assumptions, because I think all that goes into the next part, which is impact and responsibility and like the what to do with it once it's there. But I mean, we so much don't want to be with emotions, right? Not like us personally, but as people,
As
sometimes we just want to
humans,
feel what?
as humans,
As humans, we just want to feel like neutral, maybe a little good. A little good because we think that we're not allowed to feel like all the good, right? Like, um and that's kind of where I think people want to sit. That's not really an emotion either, and we're on this big spectrum of them. Like we have all of them. It's not like, I don't think any of our coaches have said this, but it's not as though someone's like, "Oh yeah, depression? I've never felt that. I don't have that. It's not in my being." It's like, "Oh." um no one has said that, but if someone does, it means that they lack the agility to be with that emotion, that they can't even recognize when like the tiniest grains of sand of it comes up, because we're so avoidant of those emotions, of a lot of emotions, even like,
right?
um, I mean, like, people are avoidant of joy, and it doesn't seem real. Like, sometimes that doesn't seem real to say, but people can be really like avoidant of like celebration. Like, the idea of celebration is a big tool for us here at CJI, and to have people applaud for you or their attention to be on you as you're experiencing joy, or like, it's the experience of people being, happy with you, or making the choice to celebrate a little win in your life. People are like, okay, like, I want just the piece that says I did it with none of the emotion part. Like, I don't even want to celebrate. And that's so interesting to me because I mean, I come from a big celebration community and culture, and so when it's new to someone, I'm like, oh, I forget how difficult it can be for people to be with joy and with, honestly, like, love sometimes.
Well, I think there's a reason that we want to just kind of live in that small spectrum, right?
Mhm.
It's comfortable, it's known, but I think it's the word consumed. I think that individuals don't want to be consumed by the breadth of all the emotions that we have and we're capable of. And so when we're talking about at the bottom of the map of emotions, so hopelessness and despair and a loneliness, all those, when I say it, I mean, can't you even feel that constrictedness? And it's like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. And then at the top, what you're talking about, the joy, the bliss, the love, it's like I'm going to be out on both spectrums, right? The end, the top and the bottom. It's like, what if I'm consumed by that? Then what? I lose control. There's that whole control thing. And it's like, what we're talking about with agility is being able to be with hopelessness and despair and going, this is here for me right now. Let me feel that. Maybe if I'm even really curious, what's that about? Let's
Mhm,
explore that. And
mhm,
you'll find that the clarity of that, the emotions will shift anyways. They're always shifting. Again, we're in the emotion all the time. But the same for like up there with bliss and joy and love. It's like, well, can I sustain this? Or am I going to burn out like a sun? It's like
mhm.
that's a lot of whoo energy. And it's like, I don't know if I could be, the judgment you were just talking about. So it's like, if we just knew that there's no bad emotion, that they're all good, they're just highlights. It's that chemical release when
Mhm.
we're in that space and we can just be with it and it will shift to someplace else. Because you can't stay down there
Right.
and you can't stay up there because they're flowing always.
I love the concept that you said that people fear, any of them because they're afraid to be consumed. But it's funny to me because it's like the secret to not be consumed by them is to actually feel them, because then you know them back and forth. And like, sure, I understand, especially with something like depression, right? It's like there is, I mean, that is a full diagnosis. It can also be a feeling, but it also can have a full diagnosis. So like when we're talking about the feeling of it, um we have to allow ourselves to go there even a little bit. And you can have people in your life that help you stay a little more balanced, especially when you're afraid to go too deep into it, right? You can have like a coach who's there to support you and witness you, because going too far into it, people think that they're going to disappear and people are just going to leave them to like rot there. And by allowing yourself to feel it, you're giving yourself permission to not stay there, because then you really get consumed when you're avoiding it, and you avoid and avoid, avoid, that the only alternative that your body needs, your whole entire being needs, is to be there for even a little bit. Um, and so then you'll be forced to go there. And then sometimes that shift is so heavy that it's like, and now I feel like I can't get out. And now I feel like I don't have help. And now I feel like I'm just stuck in this pit of despair. And then it tumbles into even more. Whereas if you let yourself feel it, I don't know,
Yeah.
set a timer, say I'm going to be real, real sad for like 30 minutes and just let myself be there. Um, and this starts to go into impact and responsibility, right? Because it's about the choices that you make after. But to not be consumed by any of these emotions, we have to let ourselves go through. There's no jumping over, there's no going around. It's through. And
Right.
it's not always easy to do that.
Well, it would be a great experiment while people are learning their emotional agility is to not set a timer, set a stopwatch and really allow yourself and if you're not sure how to do that, again, one of our coaches is more than happy to help you because it is the work that we do, is to allow yourself to just sit there. And your head is a very strong muscle. So you're going to pop out. And then if you have somebody there who's trained and skilled, they can take you back to where you are. And it's like just being with this emotion, like really being with it, not talking about it or the story about it, because that's still the head. When you're really being with it in your body, you gave us some clues, like, let's go there. What is the sensation of it? What does it feel like? Is it frenetic? Is it um, empty? You just feel it and really be with it. Have that stopwatch and see how long you're in there, because if you're really feeling it, all of a sudden you're going to find yourself shifting to another emotion, and that hopelessness and despair might actually go into pessimism, or I need I need the actual map to see what's there. Worthlessness. I mean, you're going to move up. Blame. It's like, oh, I've got more feelings here, but it's got more energy, and you're going to find that it gets more expansive if you're down in the bottom, and if you're just, you're going to see it move. But the
Mhm.
stopwatch will show you, no, you haven't been there forever. It's just a matter of feeling it and flowing with it. And it actually is quite fascinating, this humanness of us and emotions and the ability to actually feel
Mhm.
and notice and be like, wow, that in itself was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and I would say like any exploration like that with a coach or by yourself, it's never really one isolated emotion, right? Often when we're going to focusing on our emotions, we're not choosing singular ones. We're actually usually dealing with some swirl of many different things. So having the map of emotions allows you to start to pick them apart and seeing what's there. And it's kind of that literacy that's really helpful because then you have that list of them that allows you to be like, it's not this, it is this, it's not this, it is this. And then once you start to identify like what myriad of emotions are there, you can start to say, okay, so what piece of this feels like depression? What piece of this feels like envy? What piece of this feels like worthlessness? Because they do feel though they may feel similarly, but they're separate emotions and
Hmm.
they show up differently for everyone. So the more clear you can get with that in your being, so it's like it's a heart definition instead of a head definition because literacy is a head definition. Agility is a heart definition, but it doesn't need to go anywhere yet. And that's what we'll get to more in impact and responsibility. But with agility, it's just let's just feel and know
Yes.
what that feels like for you first before we go anywhere else. So a lot of this is that slowing down we're always talking about.
Yes. Yes. And I would say, okay, so here's my takeaway and an offer to our wonderful public is, when you're feeling emotion and you notice that, you're in your head because you're trying to identify it. Once you do, let's say it's worry, close your eyes and just go to that place in your body. See and check in with your body, kind of like what we do at PESH. We start with the physical and the emotional and the all the whole thing. It's like, where is that? Where does that live in my body? It takes you out of your head, but it also helps you just notice. That noticing is the very first part of agility. It's like, that worry. It's like right up here. I could feel it. Just being in touch with that, you can now either go deeper or allow it to just flow.
Mhm.
So that's my takeaway. And my word is play, because I think that that's the place to start with as you're getting into agility. And my passion now is, let's see, physically I am, 3.7. That one popped up. Emotionally, 4.7. Spirit, 4.8. Hope, 4.5. And I said my word already. How about you? Takeaway.
Um, my takeaway is that agility can feel really small, right? Like all of these parts to emotional intelligence can feel really small. But it's really the slowing down and like taking the time to know how each emotion feels. Um, it's a step, it's a check mark. It's something that deserves recognition because it's not as easy to do. It's when we start to hear the message that our emotions are trying to tell us. So it's a really important step that's often overlooked because it's just noticing, right? Like it's not like defining, sure, you could write it down and have the actual word and all of that with literacy, but with agility, I think this is a step we often jump over because it doesn't have that same like concrete like You could write down how you feel, absolutely, but it's really about what you're feeling viscerally, and so sometimes we find it hard to place value on doing that as an action or an activity or an exercise, but it's actually so powerful, especially when we're later ignited, stimulated by something else that causes an emotion that wants to tell us messages, because then you can start to recognize those patterns for yourself. And the more educated you are on how you are, and how what shows up for you, the more you can have power in the next step of emotional intelligence, being your impacting your responsibility. um so, okay, my pesh, that's my takeaway. And my pesh is physically a 3.75, emotionally a 4.27, spiritually a 4, and my hope is a 4.5, and my word is hmm, my word is
Go to your emotion.
the word's cloudy, I think, right
Mm.
now. Yeah. And that's where I'm at. Thank you so much for tuning in today and being here with us, and bringing your full present self, just as we have. New episode will come out next week.
Yes, I also say thank you. It's been lovely to be with you, and enjoy the rest of your day. And remember that you're more powerful than you realize.